Hello and welcome to the Klassiki podcast. I'm your host, Sam Goff. Klassiki is your window into the world of Eastern European film. Subscribers gain access to our library of classic and contemporary titles, as well as access to filmmaker interviews, video introductions, program notes, and much more. You can sign up for a 7-day free trial today at klassiki.online. And if you enjoy this show, then don't forget to subscribe in your podcast app and leave us a review and a 5-star rating. Thank you. In this episode, I'm going to be dipping back into the ever-expanding archive of writing on the Klassiki Journal, which you can find at klassiki.online/journal. Today, I'll be reading an essay about the work of one of Baltic cinema's great innovators, Rolands Kalniņš, aka the Latvian Godard, whose playfully political films staged a colourful protest against Soviet occupation. This piece was written by friend of the show Joshua Polansky, a critic specialising in Baltic film, who listeners may remember from our episode in Season 3 about the great Jonas Mekas. So make sure to check out the links in the show description to find the original essay, to watch Kalniņš's wonderful rock musical 4 White Shirts on Klassiki, and for more from Joshua Polansky about all things Baltic. Our very own Godard. That's how Latvian critic Lauma Melema Batkeviča referred to the legendary Latvian director and screenwriter Rolands Kalniņš in a 2018 retrospective celebrating the filmmaker, who had died 3 years previously, just a week after his 100th birthday. He was indeed the maverick that such an honorific promises. In his film Masculine Feminine, Godard famously coined the phrase "the children of Marx and Coca-Cola," which could be used to describe the colourful, popular, and ideologically oppositional cinema of Kalniņš, one of the most important Latvians to ever stand behind a camera. Kalniņš was born in 1922, near the border with Russia in Veclabada, a peninsula situated between 3 lakes. His youth was spent in the turbulent and belligerent times of Nazi and Soviet occupations, and then the Second World War. He was a contemporary of both Jean-Luc Godard and Federico Fellini, leaders in the French and Italian new waves that renegotiated the cinema conventions of the 1960s. He was also a great iconoclast to status quo filmmaking, just like his Western European peers. Narrative conventions and ideological guidelines mattered less to Kalniņš than making the films he envisioned and the way that he envisioned them. After school, Kalniņš worked a series of short-stinted jobs in the early 40s, including as a newspaper delivery boy and a sports journalist, before finding a job in a theatre. In 1944, he finally landed at the Riga Film Studio, successfully dodging the military draft along the way. But he never formally studied film. This biographical coincidence, as well as the shared surname, draws attention to the main character in his most famous work, the 1967 musical 4 White Shirts. That protagonist, who goes by the name Cezars Kalniņš, is the lyricist for an edgy rock band known as the Optimists, who has no formal art schooling, and who is accused by a bandmate of not knowing a musical key from a closet key. At the Riga Film Studio, Kalniņš worked his way up from assistant director to director with relative haste. By 1959, at 37 years old, he had endured the system long enough to make his directorial debut with Ilze, a propaganda film set in the 40s about the murderous drama at a countryside collective farm. It would be the first of 25 films. 4 White Shirts, or Breathe Deeply as the original censor's title had it, would represent Kalniņš's greatest mark on Latvian cinema. A production still from the film serves as the title image of the National Film Centre of Latvia's online selection of classical films. It's also the only film from Latvia to ever compete in the Classics competition selection at the Cannes Film Festival. Uldis Pucitis, sometimes referred to as the Latvian Harrison Ford, plays Cezars Kalniņš, affectionately known as Julis to his closest friends. He is a stubborn rabble-rouser whose song lyrics irritate Anita, played by Dina Kupler, a member of the Youth Aesthetic Education Committee, and a censor, she labels one of the band's songs as borderline pornographic in her official review, an accusation that César sees no problem with. The ensuing drama between the youthful, arrogant, and targeted artist and the aesthete critic and censor almost preempts the film's own real-life antagonistic relationship with the authorities. In a rejection of narrative tightness, the film ends with an ambiguity reminiscent of canonical French New Wave titles like Truffaut's 400 Blows. A strong thread running through Kalniņš's filmography is his unimpeachable fondness for popular music. Tunes play frequently and loudly in his fictional worlds. The music of Four White Shirts was written by the famous Latvian composer Imants Kalniņš, another famous Kalniņš adding to the list of possible reference for the protagonist's name. The songs in the film became household anthems for many Latvians via performances by a rock band called Menuets, with whom Imants Kalniņš collaborated. So, when the film was finally shown to the public in the 1980s, they were already familiar with the melodies, which helped to fast-track Four White Shirts into classic territory. Keeping with the tradition of the boundary-pushing new wave, the song's lyrics border on nonsensical. In one song, with lyrics written by the Latvian poet and journalist Māris Čaklais, a refrain compares Napoleon Bonaparte to a cat. Quote, "I only know that a dead Napoleon is buried in the ground so he doesn't smell, but a live kitten is fed warm milk." A clear deviation from mainstream songwriting in any language. This comparison of iconic authority with a feeble domesticated animal probably doesn't help either. The song also points to the great equalizer, death. Aya Draimane, the chair of the Boston Baltic Film Festival, has this to say: "In my opinion, this song really talks about how in the end, what does it all matter? Wars, fame, dictatorships. When we die, we're all the same. Life goes on, and kittens still drink warm milk." The political musicality of the so-called singing revolution, by which the Baltic states regained independence from the Soviet Union, is therefore anticipated in Kalniņš cinema. Tseplis, Kalniņš's 1972 film, set in the 20s around the workings of a brick-making businessman, showcases his emphasis on Latvian culture as a way to see through Russification and towards a freer future. The plot of that film revolves around the failures of a venture capitalist and easily checks the political boxes needed for the party authorities, but it also slyly creates nostalgia for an earlier pre-Soviet Latvia. In this regard, César's Kalniņš profession in Four White Shirts, he lays telephone lines for a living, cannot be ignored either. Just as with his music, he spends his professional hours connecting Latvians to the world. In this regard, we could also pay attention to the incensing of a new apartment with juniper in Four White Shirts, a custom one character emphasizes as an ancient Latvian tradition. Or the abundant vacations to Western Europe, and even the United States, in the 1930s set Rocky Road from 1983. Kalniņš's use of photographic stills and poetic pillow shots of Riga also supplement this hypothesis of Latvian patriotism. His cityscapes rarely work as establishing shots that ground the geographical setting. Instead, they operate as poetic and reflective asides, or even as dream sequences. The Riga of old is a city to be dreamed of. The sheer frequency with which his films avoid the occupied present in favour of the past hints at nostalgia for the Latvia of his younger years, a Latvia more open to the world than that of the Latvian Soviet Socialist Republic. His boundary pushing resulted in several clashes with the authorities and led to outright and implicit bans on a number of his films. The authorities shelved his 1966 film Stone and Flinders, also known as I Remember Everything, Richard. That film is set in the world of the Latvian Legion, a Waffen-SS formation staffed by ethnic Latvians during the Nazi occupation, and a subject that would be difficult for any filmmaker to escape the heavy hand of Soviet censorship. Four White Shirts was scheduled to have a screening for high-ranking party authorities in Leningrad, but the screening was cancelled and the film was shelved until the 1980s. Kalniņš himself described it as having been disappeared from the world and from his filmography. Perestroika created an environment that enabled the film to be politically revived and publicly screened. Perhaps most tragically, the negatives for Kalniņš's 1974 film Maritime Climates were ordered to be destroyed entirely, and only 34 minutes of this comedy survive today. But what persists is borderline experimental cinematography that has more in common with Dziga Vertov than anything come out of 70s Mosfilm, replete with wild satirical musical numbers and gorgeous young people having fun on the beach. It seems to anticipate the experimental work of music videos later in the 20th century. The compositions are odd, often partly obscured, and a completely new and innovative camera angle appears every few shots. The bright primary palette that pops in Maritime Climates carry over to the director's other colour works, and even to his lesser-known documentaries. Indeed, Latvia has a proud documentary history, and Kalniņš's contributions to the genre are often underappreciated. Several of his documentary works give preferential treatment to Latvian culture, such as his tracing of the influence of Goethe on Latvian literature in 1999's The Eternal Faust. His most significant foray into documentary filmmaking would come about 20 years after the golden age of the so-called Riga school of poetic documentary cinema. In 1980, with The Conversation with the Queen, a personal excavation of the actor Via Ādmane, a mixture of archival footage, interviews and still photographs, Kalniņš's film strips Ādmane of stardom and gets to Via, the human, her doubts, regrets and unhappiness. Her reflections on the passing years of her career project the immense gravity of change onto the Latvian Soviet Republic. Interestingly, Kalniņš also collaborated on this film with the great Juris Podnieks, the most important documentarian in Latvia after the Riga School's golden age, and the man behind the seminal Perestroika documentary, Is It Easy to Be Young? In the words of Dieter Rietumer, film theorist and director of the National Film Centre of Latvia, Rolands Kalniņš is one of the most significant Latvian film directors. Someone who, under the conditions of Soviet isolation and ideological control, dared to live in a global space. His most outstanding films were once banned from public screening for being too modern and ironic. Nevertheless, these films are among the most stylistically daring in the entire 20th century Latvian cinematic experience. That was Rolands Kalniņš, Riding the Baltic New Wave with Latvia's Godard, written by Joshua Polansky and read by Sam Goff. You can find this and other essays, companions and watch lists on our journal at klassiki.online/journal. Make sure to check out the links in the show description to find the original essay, to watch Kalniņš's wonderful rock musical 4 White Shirts on Klassiki, and for more from Joshua Polansky about all things Baltic film. Don't forget to subscribe to this show on your podcast app, and please leave us a review and a 5-star rating to help us reach as many people as possible. Thank you.